is in season and everything is coming to life. We have our greens, we have our blues, purples, orange, yellows, any color of the rainbow that you can think of. And how wonderful would it be to be able to bring all that beautiful color into our home? With us today we have Tanner, who is actually an expert on indoor planting and transplanting of plants. Thank you for coming today, Tanner.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, what do we have to work with today? Show me.
So over here we have a spider plant. It's a great house plant. In the middle we have some succulents. And over here we have two different kinds of PHALAENOPSIS orchids.
Oh, okay. And this is one of those orchids too?
Yes, they're just different varieties of it.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll keep her over here so she doesn't fall down because the wind's very windy today.
All right, so let's get started with our succulent here. If you want to take this one.
Okay, thank you.
And what I like to do is just squeeze the outside of the pot, kind of loosen up the soil, and then you can sort of grab these gingerly, and it should just slide right out.
Oh, okay, cool.
There you go. And this is a good opportunity to check your root system, make sure everything's nice and healthy. If you see any mushy roots, that's a sign they need to be clipped off.
Okay.
These all look kind of good right here, so what we do is we can kind of just loosen this right here. Yeah, don't get any of the soil in the new soil.
Nice.
We just want to kind of loosen up this root ball down here.
Okay, just down at the bottom?
Yep, just down at the bottom. Kind of get it nice and loose. Okay, now we can set our pot in right here. I just like to do it in here, mess-free. Put a little bit in the bottom just to cover the bottom little part there.
Like that? Is that too much?
Oh, that's perfect, yeah, just a little bit. And then we can set them down in there. And then we do what's called backfilling. So then you just put the dirt all around the edges and sort of pack it in as you go. So you wanna, if you wanna grab some, yeah, you can just start to kind of pack it in there yourself. I'll just use my hand here. That's what I usually do anyway. And you want to fill it up. You don't want to fill it up the entire way. You don't want to go to the top. No, otherwise, when you water, it's just going to spill right out. You want it to be able to absorb the water a little bit.
Oh, okay. Does it expand when the water goes into the dirt? Or?
It'll actually sink down a little bit more. It'll shrink some.
Okay.
Every time you water, a little bit of soil is going to come out your bottom drainage hole here.
Okay.
So you want to make sure you have enough soil to kind of combat that or counteract that, but you don't want to have so much that when you pour water on it, it just spills right out without going out into the soil. Yeah. And it's important to note also that this is a cactus soil. A cactus / succulent soil. These types of plants in nature, they're a desert plant. So they naturally grow in very sandy soil, gritty soil. There's not a lot of organic matter in there. So we like to replicate that when we plant them in our homes. So there you have it right there. And the next thing you do is you just water it in. So this is good to just sort of set the roots in. You can help them with the shock of being transplanted. And you can see how the soil sort of soaks right in there.
Yeah.
And then there you have your newly potted succulent. Now these will do great in a south-facing window, a west-facing window.
Okay.
The only window I'd avoid is a north. That gets the least amount of light up here in North Texas.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
As long as it's unobstructed, your south and your west are going to be your best. These are high-light plants. They like as much light as they can get. So that's the.
So you want the evening sun where it's the strongest.
Yeah, south window and west window. That really strong, bright light is what they crave.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
The next plant we're going to do is our spider plant, and this requires a little bit different soil mixture. They do like a little bit more organic. So this is just a regular houseplant compost soil mixed in with some of that same cactus soil to provide a little bit more drainage. And then we added some perlite in there to even add more drainage. This is a plant that likes organic matter, but it also doesn't want to be wet. It doesn't want to sit in water. All right, so we removed the hanger from this pot. And the next thing I want to do, I'm going to hand this to you.
Oh, okay.
And you can kind of use the same method. If you just work your hands around the side and kind of
squeeze it.
Yep, squeeze it a little bit, massage it, and then you can kind of tip it over, support it with one hand and kind of tip it with the other. You can kind of wiggle it out there.
I don't think I loosened it up enough. Now,
keep loosening.
While I'm trying to loosen this sucker up, because my hands are probably not as big and strong as yours. You mentioned that we're using different soil. I don't think I've ever even really thought about the importance of not just grabbing a bag of soil and just being mindful of the type of soil you purchase for your plant.
Sure. So when we're bringing a plant from the outdoors to the indoors, these naturally grow outdoors. So we want to replicate their outdoor conditions as much as we can indoors. And the most important quality for that is the soil that they live in. Everybody lives in, each different plant lives in different kinds of soil. Your succulents are, you know, very sandy, very gritty, very little organic matter. Your tropical plants like this, they have a lot more organic matter. They want to hold on to a little bit more moisture.
Okay.
So that's what we have to provide them with if they're going to thrive in our homes.
Have a problem. Okay, well, that explains why all my plants have died.
Yes, so this is a good opportunity. Whenever we repot, we want to look at the root system. We want to make sure that it's nice and healthy. And we want to get rid of anything that's not nice and healthy.
Okay.
What you're looking for are these nice, you see how all these are white?
Yes.
Really good roots, really healthy roots. If you see anything brown or mushy,
Okay.
or it smells kind of funky, you want to clip those off. Just take a nice pair of clean scissors,
Let's clip it.
chop them off, and you're good to go. So this is the same sort of thing where you want to loosen the root ball. I'm going to grab your pot right here. Just set it in here. You want to loosen the root ball a little bit, and this is going to help stimulate a little bit of growth. You're going to get more soil in there and everything. I'm just going to place a little bit of soil down here in the bottom. Again, we're just covering the bottom little bit here.
Okay.
This is just going to give it fresh material to grow into, and it will
How's that?
grow up to be a big. That looks fantastic to me. So then, the next thing you want to do is you just kind of put it down in there. You want to make sure it's nice and centered. There you go. Make sure that your foliage. Now see, this is a good opportunity to show something because it's actually a little bit too deep in there.
Okay.
I'm going to grab it back out. You want to, and it's sort of a guessing game because you don't know, without measuring.
Right.
You want to fill it up to where these pots actually show you something pretty good. I always say to put the topsoil right here at this line.
Okay.
That way, when the water comes in, it has an opportunity to sink in, kind of like what we were talking about with the succulents.
Makes sense.
Okay, so it's a guess and check game to where the topsoil comes up to that line.
Okay,
so let's try
that's
again.
Like, already a part of the plant itself.
Exactly,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
That looks pretty good to me. What do you think?
Yeah, that looks really good.
All right.
It's pretty spot on.
Let's make sure all of the foliage is above the pot so we're not breaking anything off. And this is another thing where we just sort of backfill.
Backfill, okay.
So now you're gonna grab some soil
Oops,
and you just stick it right in there. That's all right. Planting is kind of a messy business. Just help you kind of, and when you get it in there, you do want to sort of pat it down. Not so much that you're gonna be breaking roots, but you want it to firm it in there so the plant's not flopping all over the place. Exactly, yeah. Just going around, filling it up to that line that we talked about. There we go. And then we're gonna water it in again.
Now, how much water? I know this one doesn't need a lot of water, but like how often do you need to water this one?
It varies. It depends on where you're going to have it in your house.
Is a good place?
This is a plant that does really well in bright light, bright indirect light. So my personal plant is kept about 2 feet away from a south window. It's going to get lots of nice natural bright light.
Okay.
They also like a lot of humidity, and they actually feed on mold spores.
Oh.
So if you can put this in a bathroom where if you were to have mold, heaven forbid, that's probably the place it's going to be. If you have a nice bright window in your bathroom, this plant's going to love it. It's going to love the humidity. It's going to love the light. It's perfect.
I'm going to have to get one of these bathrooms.
I usually let these dry out about halfway down, and the best way to do that is to take a chopstick, poke it down in the soil about halfway, 4 or 5 inches, and if it comes out and it's dry, it's ready to water.
Okay, that's brilliant.
All right.
Okay, yeah.
Let's move on to our orchids.
Our orchids. Okay. You want the little one?
So mine will be be the little one.
Okay.
Yours will be the big one. This is like, you just got something from a gift, and it was beautiful for a while, and the blooms may have died off.
Kind of like this one has nothing on it anymore.
Exactly, yes. So we need a little bit different potting medium here.
Oh, what is that?
This is long fiber sphagnum moss. In nature, these are actually epiphytes. These orchids grow as epiphytes, which means they grow on top of other plants. They don't grow in the soil at all. So we don't want to give them any organic material. They don't need it.
Oh, I would have just plopped it in some soil, but it needs...
Yes, it doesn't actually need, so what this is going to do is it's going to hold on to a little bit of moisture, because in nature, it's so humid there that the roots are always getting a little bit of moisture. Here in North Texas, it's not that humid, and we can't keep them outdoors to get the humidity. So this will provide that extra little moisture. It'll hold on to it for a little while, provide the roots with moisture. So let's sort of unwrap your orchid here. Your gift gone bad.
There we go.
There we go. We just kind of take them out. Get rid of that. And this is the same sort of deal. We want to massage the outsides, and we can kind of take them out of there. They're usually not as bound in the pot as soil, because the moss should be pretty
So is it
loose.
just basically like it's another plant that is that what this is? I'm trying to make sure. Okay.
Are you saying between these two differences?
Well, like this soil right here, like is it?
Oh, it's the same sort of material.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. This is the long fiber sphagnum moss.
All right. Wow, that's
You can also do this in bark, in orchid bark.
okay.
But I find that the orchid bark dries out a little bit too fast for my schedule,
Okay.
where you have to water a lot more frequently with that.
I'm not getting that loose enough.
Let's see if we can.
I'm always afraid I'm gonna break it.
That's all right. Pots are good to be broken. Okay, so this, we want to get rid of all of this moss that's been out.
Okay.
And this plant was actually a little bit overwatered, and this is a good opportunity to show you what I mean by healthy roots
Versus not so healthy.
versus not so healthy roots. You can be pretty gentle with these, but it's okay if some of them break off. It's just part of, you know, it's just part of repotting it.
Right.
And again, it's gonna help stimulate a little bit of growth as well.
Right.
But if you see here, you see these green roots?
Uh-huh.
That's a healthy root. If you feel it, it's nice and firm.
Yeah.
Whereas if you feel this one, it's very mushy and
there's
kind
like
of,
nothing to
it's
it.
almost papery.
Yeah, it's
yes.
almost
And you
like-
can actually just sort of like kind of
that
pull a
off.
lot of that off. So you want to go around the plant, and you can smell it. It kind of smells a little bit funky too.
Yeah.
Go around the plant and you can loosen all of that up, kind of get as much of the moss out as you can, because we don't want any of that material that has been rotting on there, the roots that have been rotted. We don't want that to come over to our next potting medium.
Okay. It contaminates it basically.
It can contaminate it, yeah. So we want to start fresh. We want to give this thing a new lease on life almost. So that's looking pretty good. We can just get all that out of there. All right, so we just go around and we cut off all the matter that's dead. Just give it a nice clean snip. And this one was severely watered, kind of neglected. So there is quite a bit of trimming to do. Get this one out here.
The one right there.
Yep.
What about this?
There you go. And sometimes people think that when the root is green, it's not something that they see in their other plants. Usually, like typically, a healthy root is white like that. But
Yeah.
these plants actually photosynthesize through their roots as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so in nature, like I was saying, they grow on the sides of trees. The roots are exposed, so
That
they
makes
can,
sense.
yeah, so they help the plant out by photosynthesizing as well and providing nutrients to the plant.
Now, does this, like, because you said you don't want it to getting into the dead root, getting into the new soil and the good soil, does it contaminate then and cause the plant to become sick, or?
It can. You know, it's always just best to start out fresh because, you know, without really analyzing the soil, you don't know what's transferring from one to the next. You don't know where this has been before. So it's best to just start off nice and clean.
Again, these are alive,
Exactly.
you know, so.
Exactly. Okay, so now we have our nice, fresh, clean roots.
Yeah.
A little pick-me-up, okay? So we have our moss here, and it's been soaking in water. This retains quite a bit of moisture. Next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna grab this pot here. I like to use terracotta for a lot of my orchids. I also use clear plastic pots. I'll explain that a little bit later, but what I like to do, get this spike out of the way here. What you do is sort of just grab a handful of moss, squeeze out the excess water, and you can sort of stuff it in there.
Okay. So instead of putting it in here first, you start out with
Right in the middle.
giving it a good.
Yeah, you can do it either way. This is just how I've always done it. I just kind of go around and pack it in there.
Because you removed
Hold
it
it.
all. Because when we did this one, it still had its soil
A little
around
bit,
its roots and everything. We took some off just to stimulate it. Well, this one we completely removed all of it, so we're kind of giving it a new base.
Exactly. So with that one, if there was a lot of dead organic material in there, like a lot of dead roots, I would have gotten rid of the soil completely, washed the roots and everything, but that wasn't the case. So I've got this nice root ball here. Do you want to squeeze out a bit of
Sure,
moss
and
here
just
and put it down there at the bottom? Yeah, we can get a good base going. Repotting.
I caught myself.
Repotting orchids can be a two-person job, that's for sure.
Do you want more than that down there, or is that good?
I think that's probably
Okay.
good. We'll just stick that down right in there, and then it's another case of sort of
At
backfilling.
the line, yeah.
Yeah, so you can have it right there if you want to hold that for me.
Sure can.
and then you just kind of pack it in there.
Now, do you want to pack it tight or leave it loose?
Again, it's one of those things where you want it to be firm enough to where it will support it,
Okay.
but you don't want it to be so much that you're breaking off roots, especially since we had to get rid of so many of those roots.
Right.
Now, it's important, especially for orchids, to not get water down in the crown of these plants.
Okay.
If water gets down in this crown, it rots really, really quickly.
Oh, does it?
So when we're doing this, we're squeezing out the water, making sure not to get any moss in that crown because it does have a lot of water in it, and we don't want it to rot. So we can just pack that in there.
There's a nice little dip on this side.
And you're all set to go. Oh yeah, there you go. There we go.
Oh,
And you have a nicely repotted orchid.
Oh.
One of the most important things with these guys is to note the drainage. They have a ton of drainage. Like I said, in nature, their roots are just on the side of trees. So as soon as they get wet, it's coming right off. Yeah, so we want to make sure we kind of replicate that by offering the pot a lot of drainage.
Now, you said something about a clear pot with orchids.
Yes, we're going to do that in this next one right here. So this is the same Phalaenopsis orchid. This is just a miniature version. They call it a mini Phalaenopsis.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I like that little flower.
Yeah, little flower right there. And so what we're gonna do with that, we're gonna repot it in this clear pot.
Okay.
And it's the same sort of thing. Do you wanna do this one?
Sure.
I did the last one. It'll be the same sort of step.
Yeah,
You
squeeze.
kind of bring it out.
Come on out.
There you go.
And then just remove
Yeah, we're gonna be removing all of the old moss.
Probably should have put my hair up in a ponytail. This wind is not being nice to me today. This is really dry, this moss is, compared to this pot. Is it supposed to be dry, or was this, the fact that this one was so wet, was that?
It's actually better to be on the drier side. These guys can go quite a ways without getting wet.
Okay.
And in most plants, just in general, it's best to err on the side of more dry. And you'll see it's actually evident here
Yeah, look at
that it has a much healthier roots, has a much healthier root system, almost no dead roots at all.
Yeah, that looks really good.
And that's because it wasn't saturated with water, it wasn't trapped in there.
I've got that one right there that's kind of icky.
Make sure you get all those roots or all the moss out there from that, deep into that ball.
That is in there really good.
Yeah, they do kind of pack it in there.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, so we inspect the roots. We make sure that that everything is fantastic and ready to go with it.
Good.
And we're just going to do the same thing again.
Okay.
Let's grab our pot that went away.
So a little bit of this, because I don't.
Yes, just squeeze out the excess moisture, and then you want to pack it right in the middle. Yeah, right in the kind of the middle of the roots there.
Kind of like.
Just sort of how it was done already.
Yeah,
They
like
kind
a
of.
little seat for it.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
put some around it.
That's perfect.
I have never done this before.
It's a great time to learn. Yes.
Because honestly, I would have looked at this stuff and said, I'm not getting my hands in that. It's not happening.
I also want to point out that we're doing this when the blooms are starting to die off, or they're already dead as they were in this other one.
Yeah, I noticed that.
It's typically best to replant any plant when it's not in bloom or it's not flowering.
Okay.
It's putting a lot of energy out to doing that bloom or that flower.
That growth, yeah.
Right, and we don't want to shock it all of a sudden and then the blooms just fall off before they've been able to mature. Yeah. So I make sure that mine are on their way out or have already finished. Let me put a little bit extra in here.
All right.
Also, and when we repot plants, especially orchids, especially ones like this, we don't want to go up too big in pot size. I always say maybe 1 inch or 2 at most for most potted plants. That's how you're going to set yourself up for success.
Because too big was just too much for it.
Exactly.
Now, when you buy this moss, do you buy it dry and then have to hydrate it yourself?
Yes, it comes as like a sort of dry brick, just in a plastic bag. Soak it in here for a couple hours. It's going to retain a lot of moisture for you. Set yourself up for success. Now, the reason that I like to do these in clear pots is that, well, one, if you want to just set this out, like I said, the roots are going to photosynthesize for you.
Right.
So it helps. But also, the best way to know when to water these plants is to watch their roots. When the roots turn white, kind of silverish, that's the time to water.
Oh.
So you can just slip this in like a clear or a decorative pot, check it like once a week, see if the roots are silver. If they're silver, it's ready to water. If not, wait.
So once a week, check it once a week.
That's what I typically do. I just take mine out of its decorative pot, look at it. If I don't water it that week, then I'll probably check in another 3 or 4 days.
Okay.
Yeah, because these guys can go quite a bit without water.
Wow, okay.
So you're all set to go.
Well, thank you, Tanner, so much for coming out, and I know I learned a lot. Got a little wet in the process, but this was actually really knowledgeable, and this is great. Quick question: you told us about the best place to put this plant, and about it, the mold spores. What about these? What health benefits, if any, do these provide?
You're not going to get many health benefits from the succulents themselves, other than
the joy of seeing their beauty.
Exactly, the joy of having life in your house.
Okay,
yes.
cool. Yeah, because I know like other plants do provide a lot of benefits when it comes to having them in your house
Sure.
and everything. So, aloe plant is one of them, correct?
Aloe plant does a lot of great benefits. The golden pothos, snake plant, the spider plant right here actually is one of the better air purifying plants that you can get.
Okay.
So it's a great healthy plant to have in your home.
What about the orchids?
So orchids, my philosophy is always to look at how they grow in nature, try to replicate that in the home.
Okay.
In nature, like I said, they grow on trees, so they're going to get a lot of sort of dappled, indirect sunlight because they're being covered by the canopy of the tree.
Makes sense.
So in our home, I like to put mine like in an east window or a few feet away from a south window. They want that bright light, but right up next to the window might be too much for them to burn.
Okay.
If the leaves actually start turning yellow around the edges, that's a good indication that's getting too much light, or maybe even sort of reddish. They can turn reddish or orange. Sometimes even the stems right here will turn reddish, kind of orange, and that's an indication it's too much light. Back it up a foot or two.
And you're good to go.
Exactly, yep.
Oh, thank you so much again for coming out, Tanner. It has been a pleasure to replant with you.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.